Wind swept the granite spine of Moonridge, while dusk painted the last strip of orange behind the peaks. From the hilltop parking lot, headlights queued like slow-moving comets, inching toward the white hemisphere of Moonridge Observatory. Tonight was the Perseid Z9 flyby, an unpredictable copper-tailed comet that would skate past Earth only once in 6 human lifetimes. The trust that funded the observatory had advertised a public comet watch party. Families in puffer jackets, graduate students, and a few elderly donors climbed the stone staircase towards the terrace, their breath frosting beneath strings of solar lanterns. Rick Hale wiped steam from a polished air pot and centered the last of 3 folding tables beside the entrance. He was 32, lanky, and possessed the restless cheerfulness of someone who believed every minor interaction could tilt the universe toward kindness. Since he earned rent money by day at the Bean and Planet coffee truck, donating his Friday nights to Moonridge's events had become an eccentric hobby. His friends thought volunteer barista at an observatory was Rick-speak for flirting with postgraduate astronomers. The truth was more private. When he was 12, his amateur astronomer mother had died from rapid leukemia. Making coffee on this mountain let him feel her presence in the thin air, and each cup he served felt like repaying a cosmic debt. Dr. Celeste Kowalski appeared from the dark mouth of the service corridor, carrying a small silver briefcase. Her black pixie cut was flecked with new snow, and her hazel eyes had that sleepless shine Rick had learned to read, as I have been coding orbital dynamics equations for 48 hours. She returned his wave with the quick, inward smile of an overworked scientist who couldn't spare additional facial muscles. "Coffee first, revelation later," Rick asked. Celeste set the briefcase between 2 canisters of half and half. "Decaf, no dairy. Tonight I want my heartbeat steady. The grant committee is live-streaming the announcement." Rick drew a Colombian pour-over and added almond milk. While he worked, he studied her. 2 weeks earlier, she'd confided she intended to name the newly verified comet after her late mentor, Dr. Ortega, a decision likely to irritate Bradford Wynne, the observatory's chief benefactor, who had expected the object to bear his surname. The tension had hummed beneath staff conversations all week like feedback in a speaker cable. Celeste collected her cup. "Once the guests settle, I'll open the dome. Don't let Wynne get people drunk before I finish the calibration." Rick lifted a mock-solemn hand. "I guard both espresso and telescope with equal zeal." The terrace swelled with chatter. Above them, the dome's slit was closed, a seam of promise against the star-choked sky. Fairy lights illuminated banners. "Welcome to Moonridge Observatory Comet Watch Livestream, 8:30 p.m. Next to Rick's coffee station, Marina Grant, the events manager, poured local micro brews. She wore a headset mic and the fixed grin of someone who spent her career corralling wealthy egos. Farther back, Theo Lynn, a postdoc with purple hair and a velvet blazer, balanced a laptop on a crate, spooling cables for the live stream. Bradford Wynne, tall, silver, and borderline tipsy already, drifted among the donors with the proprietary swagger of a king inspecting new land. Inside, the massive Schmidt reflector telescope waited like a docile whale. The rotating floor beneath the dome could spin in a full circle, so Celeste could track objects across sky quadrants. 30 minutes before first sighting, she disappeared indoors to finish aligning mirrors. Rick kept an eye on his watch, switching empty airpots, complementing meteors with mocha, tracing constellations on napkins for children. Snow began to fall, light, dry, spiraling flakes. It was picturesque, but Rick knew a sudden squall could ice the dome's track and threaten the Comet viewing. Celeste had said the mechanism's seal was delicate. Open the slit too early, and the motor could seize. He scanned the sky, tension pricking his skin. At 8:10, the terrace lights dimmed on cue. Guests collected near the viewing windows. Celeste's disembodied voice came through external speakers. Good evening, star travelers. The Perseid Z9 is currently clearing the lip of Ursa Major. In 5 minutes, we'll crack open the heavens. Applause rippled. Wynne leaned to Marina and muttered something Rick couldn't hear. Marina's headset mic was muted, but her stiff shoulders spoke volumes. Theo clicked icons. The livestream timer glowed 4:59. Rick poured a last cups. Suddenly, a metallic clang reverberated from inside the dome, followed by a low mechanical grind that cut off mid-rotation. The terrace screens flickered, then the audio feed died. Marina tapped her earpiece. "Celeste, we lost your mic," Static replied. Theo's eyes widened. The floor sensors just froze. The main interface isn't reading movement. Wynne marched to the locked glass doors and rattled them. "Why are these shut? Where's Kowalski?" "The doors auto-lock during rotation," Marina explained, voice brittle. "Safety protocol." "But there is no rotation." Rick's stomach folded. Celeste must still be on the observing deck. He dashed to the maintenance intercom bolted outside. "Dr. K, can you hear me?" Silence, then a faint scratch cut off. Theo hunched over the laptop. Something tripped the intrusion safeguards. The system thinks a ladder is still extended, so it slammed the dome brake. "The emergency override?" Marina asked. "Needs manual confirmation from the inside," which meant Celeste was trapped. And if the brake engaged on a moving floor, the torque could have wedged the access door shut. Rick pictured her alone inside the whale, temperature dropping, every exit sealed by failsafes she herself had installed after last winter's near accident. Guests murmured anxiously. The Comet's predicted window was 8 minutes away. The donors sensed catastrophe and looked for someone to blame. Wynne turned his glare on Rick, as though baristas handled astrophysical emergencies. "Find a way in," he snarled. "Now." Rick suppressed the desire to throw hot cocoa at the philanthropist's suede boots. He scanned the courtyard. The side maintenance hatch? But Celeste had digitized that lock 2 months ago. The only other access was via the old crawl space beneath the dome that contained electrical conduit and ventilation. Celeste once joked you could still taste 1960s asbestos down there. "Marina," Rick said quietly. "Keep everyone calm. Tell Theo to skip to the pre-recorded segment of Celeste's earlier lecture. I'll try the crawl space." Marina bit her lip, nodded, and hustled back to the mic stand with professional brightness. "Ladies and gentlemen, while we resolve a brief technical hiccup, please enjoy a special behind-the-scenes video." When the speakers resumed, Rick jogged around the dome's base. Snow clothed the gravel path. Behind the structure, he located the low steel grate, padlocked but aged. He produced the universal aid of all coffee caterers, a flathead bottle opener. 2 strikes popped the rusted clasp. He ducked inside, cell phone flashlight slicing a ribcage of cables. The air smelled of ozone and dusty insulation. Half crawling, half sliding, he followed the upward conduit to the interior maintenance ladder. Ice crusted the rungs. Whoever had accessed it last hadn't replaced the heating wrap. At the top, a hatch led into the lower annulus of the rotating floor. Rick pushed. It didn't budge. The brake wedge was deployed here too, pressing against the steel. He pulled out his phone, dialed Marina, whispered, "Hatch blocked. Need tools." "I'll send Theo," she replied, voice trembling. Hurry. While he waited, Rick exhaled clouds, rubbing warmth into his arms. Something glittered near the hinge, shards of black polymer. He picked one up and recognized 3D printer filament, brittle and glass-like. Celeste used that material to prototype new gear covers. Why would fragments be here, by the brake wedge? A strange notion wormed through him. What if the failsafe hadn't simply malfunctioned? What if someone had printed a fake sensor guard, installed it wrong, and created the fault on purpose? Footsteps echoed on the ladder. Theo swinging a yellow toolkit. His breath smoked as he crawled into the annulus. Man, my research stipend does not include spelunking, he whispered, but his fingers were sure as he handed Rick a ratchet spanner. Rick knelt by the wedge clamp. Be our lookout, he said, and loosened 2 bolts until the wedge sagged. They heaved together. The metal thunked aside. Rick pushed the hatch. It squealed open. The floor above them was motionless, lit only by emergency red LEDs. Theo grimaced. She's up on the deck. He crept after Rick up the interior stair, the 2 emerging into the main chamber. The sight froze them. The telescope was canted 15 degrees off its rest position, as if arrested in mid-pivot. Frost laced the primary mirror, and near the control console Celeste lay on her back, breathing but motionless, a gash along her temple. Rick rushed, kneeling. Her pulse beat rapid under chilled skin. He found a length of coaxial cable, improvised a compression bandage. Celeste's eyes flickered open. Dome, locked, she rasped. Sabotage. I know, Rick said. Who did this? Her gaze drifted toward a small module screwed beneath the main console, an unfamiliar grey box with a single glowing diode. Then she slipped back into unconsciousness. Theo studied the box. This isn't stock. Looks like a Bluetooth relay for remote commands. Rick remembered Wynne pacing outside earlier, phone in hand, jaw tight. But Marina had called Wynne technologically Neolithic. Maybe Theo. The postdoc certainly had skills. But why injure his supervisor? Another memory surfaced. Theo handing Celeste a flash drive 3 hours ago, murmuring about new photometry. Celeste had looked annoyed. Could the sabotage be payback? He shook off suspicion for the moment and pressed the console key. The monitors remained dark. Power bus is cut, Theo said. But if we reset the breaker in the sub-panel and disengage the manual clutch, we can hand-crank the dome slit and call emergency services. Rick considered. The easiest sub-panel was inside the VIP lounge, accessible through an internal door currently locked by the same fail-safe logic. They could loop outside and re-enter, but time ticked. Celeste needed warmth. The temperature inside had plummeted. He rose, scanning the curved wall until he located a narrow service duct cover, high on the girder. Help me, he said. They dragged a maintenance stool. Rick climbed, popped the panel, and slithered into the ventilation shaft that paralleled the corridor to the lounge. Metal clanged under his knees. Warm air from the building's furnace whooshed along, a blessed reprieve. He scuttled sideways until a grated vent opened above the lounge's ceiling. Through the mesh, he could see Wynne's figure, alone, pouring scotch into a crystal tumbler. His smartphone glowed in his hand. The screen displayed a real-time camera feed, an overhead shot of the telescope chamber. Rick's heart slammed. Wynne was watching the sabotage play out. With a snap, Wynne removed an earpiece, dropped it into his coat pocket, and turned toward the main hall. Rick pushed the vent grate outward, lowered himself silently behind a catering cart, and padded to the breaker panel. He flipped the master. Fluorescent lights flickered. Sirens wouldn't help. They'd generate panic, but the power cycle would re-enable interior keypads. He darted back to the corridor, reached the dome access door, entered Celeste's 6-digit code, her mother's birthday, and the lock yielded. Inside, Theo knelt by Celeste, wrapping her in a thermal blanket from the emergency locker. "She's stable," he said. "What now?" Rick's reply was cut by the hiss of the door behind them. Wynne strode in, scotch still in hand. His smile was thin as comet dust. "Impressive initiative, Mr. Hale," he said, "but unnecessary. I've already alerted security to a trespass. They'll handle everything." Rick stood between Wynne and Celeste. "She's injured. We need medical rescue, not private guards." Wynne's gaze flicked to the Bluetooth relay under the console. "Ah, so you found my little retrofit. Do you know what it does?" "Remote override of the dome motors," Theo answered coldly. "Illegal as hell." Wynne sipped. "Untrue. When you fund a building, you own access. Dr. Kowalski obstinately refused to dedicate tonight's naming rights to me. She had to be, shall we say, delayed. I never intended harm, merely enough chaos to postpone the announcement until the board meeting Monday. The donors would side with their benefactor, the comet would be christened Wynne Perseid, and science marches on." Rick stared. "She could have died. She still might, if you men don't back away and let adult remedies unfold. Stories get written by winners, not baristas." Rick's anger surged like boiling milk. Adult remedies? Like fracturing a woman's skull? Wynne raised a dismissive brow. "She slipped when the floor brake engaged. Accidents happen." Theo took a step forward. Wynne reached inside his coat and drew a compact revolver, gleaming, antique, more threat than weapon. "Enough," Wynne said. "Stand aside." Rick's mind churned. He visualized the star map of Perseus he'd drawn for a child earlier. A web of positions, each point connected. Patterns. That was the key. A barista mapped flavor notes routinely. Mapping betrayal among the stars required similar thinking. There were resources in the room: the telescope's counterweight winch, the hand crank, the mirror flap release, a rack of long carbon fiber collimation rods. He lifted both hands. "Okay," he said, voice steady. "Take her, but you'll need help carrying." He moved toward a wall cabinet labeled Balance Arm Tools. Wynne's revolver tracked him. Rick opened the cabinet, pretending to fumble. His fingers closed around a collimation rod, a light, hollow cylinder 1 meter long. He pivoted, whip quick, and thrust it into Wynne's drink hand. Scotch splashed as glass shattered. The revolver's muzzle flicked off target. Theo lunged, diving at Wynne's knees. The gun fired, an ear-splitting crack, and the round pinged off the steel dome. Rick swung again, catching Wynne's wrist, sending the revolver skidding across the floor. Theo wrestled the older man's legs. Wynne cursed, kicking, but slipped on spilled liquor and crashed. Rick straddled him, pinning arms until Wynne's fury melted into wary calculation. Sirens rose outside. Actual ones this time. Marina must have called 911 once the internal feed returned. Red wash strobed through the dome slit, which, thanks to the power reset, had already begun its slow, automatic reopening, snowflakes blowing in like chalk dust over a blackboard. Rick exhaled shaky relief. He looked up. The sky revealed itself, a yawning gulf of stars. And there, the comet, a fiery smear low on the northeastern horizon. Despite ruin, beauty. Theo, breathless, fetched the thermal blanket and draped it over the subdued benefactor. For hypothermia, he deadpanned. Wynne glared daggers, but remained silent beneath the improvised arrest. Paramedics arrived first, threading gurney and oxygen tanks through the newly unlocked door. Celeste was lifted gently. She stirred, pain corrugating her brow, but consciousness returning. Rick squeezed her hand. "You're safe," he said. "Comet's on time." Through the entrance stumbled Sheriff Darius Miller, grizzled veteran of mountain tragedies. He took in the scene: blood, broken glass, spilled scotch, a bleeding philanthropist pinned by a barista, and muttered, "I leave you nerds alone for one meteor shower." Marina burst in behind him. "Rick, they said you were inside. Oh, thank God." She tackled him in a hug, headset askew. While deputies cuffed Wynne, Sheriff Miller collected statements. Wynne tried to spin an elaborate tale of rogue baristas and disgruntled postdocs, but the Bluetooth relay, the fragments of 3D filament, and Celeste's half-finished access logs told the true narrative. Around midnight, Wynne was escorted down the snowy stairs to a patrol vehicle. Camera crews, still on site for the Comet stream, captured every ignoble step. Public safety officers cleared guests to leave. Some remained, huddling at the terrace rail with borrowed binoculars as the Comet brightened. Theo rebooted the stream, voice cracking with emotion, and this time Rick had the honor of pressing the red button that captioned the on-screen graphic, official designation Ortega Kowalski 2023. Snow eased, stars wobbled in the remaining moisture, as if blinking approval. Rick brewed fresh coffee for the EMTs, warming his numb hands around the pot. He tasted it, too acidic, but served it anyway, adding marshmallows for the two teenagers who had refused to go home until they saw a tail scrape the sky. Celeste, bandaged but awake, rejoined from the ambulance long enough to stand beside Rick at the parapet. An IV dangled from her wrist like a translucent comet of its own. Silence stretched between them, comfortable as fleece. She spoke first. "Rick, you didn't just save my life. You saved my mentor's." Her voice cracked, her lips trembled in the cold. He shrugged, embarrassed. "I mapped the betrayal, like star charts, each clue another coordinate. The rest was improvisation." "You were brilliant," she managed a small smile. "I owe you." "Just invite me next time you discover something unpronounceable," he said. She laughed, winced, then lifted her gaze. "Look." The comet flared, intensifying into a copper spear slicing the velvet horizon. Gas jets streamed ultraviolet, unseen by naked eye, but implied in the shimmering wake. For a long moment, everyone on the terrace stopped breathing, as though the universe had pressed pause for them alone. Rick's chest filled with weightless wonder. He remembered afternoons with his mother, sprawled on a picnic blanket, listening to her whisper myths behind constellations. Tonight, those myths felt near enough to sip, warm as the coffee in his cup. Celeste leaned closer, voice low. "Funny thing about light. Travel far enough and even treachery glitters." He nodded. "But kindness does too. It just travels slower, takes time to reach people." She touched his forearm, her bandaged fingers light. "Then let's keep sending it." Down below, the last of the guests departed, leaving Moonridge silent atop its ridge. The observatory doors had been propped open to flush residual smoke from Wynne's pistol shot. Domed white against a quilt of fir trees, the building looked less like a scientific instrument and more like a lighthouse, a place sworn to distill darkness into guidance. Rick finished his coffee and donned the thermal blanket over Celeste's shoulders before walking her toward the ambulance. As they descended, he glanced back once, the comet still blazing overhead, a reminder that orbits bend, people err, and yet, against every cynical prediction, a splash of ice and dust can streak across cold space simply to be seen. And sometimes a barista can navigate that brilliance, mapping not just stars, but the fragile human constellations that decide how history is written in the sky.